retirement dinner was for me, 62 guests, a rented sound system, and my daughter at the microphone. She told everyone she was selling the family home to build a duplex. She had a signature page in her purse, a signature I never made. The guests applauded. I sat there holding the envelope with the real deed, a deed that still had my name on it, because the power of attorney she used was a forgery, and she didn't know I already had the proof. I'm 63. That house was paid off 30 years ago. My daughter's announcement at my retirement dinner didn't surprise me. I knew she was planning something. What she didn't know, I already found the forged power of attorney. In Brazil, you need a public notary to sell real estate. Hers was fake. A forged deed is legally void, but clearing your title takes months and thousands in legal fees. This is the story of how I discovered the betrayal, and how I turned my own retirement party into the moment she exposed herself. The first sign was a phone call I almost ignored. 3 months before the retirement dinner, a notary public from Campinas called my landline. He said a woman claiming to be my daughter had presented a power of attorney for certification. My name, my signature, my property address on the document. But the notary had a problem. The signature on the POA didn't match the one they had on file from a previous transaction. They were required by law to verify with me directly. I told them I hadn't signed anything. I told them I hadn't authorized anyone to sell or mortgage my house. The notary said they would reject the document and file a report. I hung up and stared at the kitchen wall for a long time. My daughter is 32 years old. Her name is Camilla. She's a bank manager in Sao Paulo. Smart, competent, always had a head for numbers. I raised her alone after her mother died when she was 12. I worked double shifts as a civil engineer to pay for her private school, her university, her wedding. I never said no to her, not once. That phone call was a Thursday afternoon. By Friday morning, I had driven to the registry office in my district and requested a certified copy of the property deed. The clerk handed me a document that made my hands shake. Someone had registered a promissory sale contract against my house. A contract I never signed. A contract that claimed I had agreed to sell the property to a construction company for 280,000 reais. The signature next to my name was close, but not exact. The lowercase f in my surname was looped differently. The date was wrong. I was in Lisbon for a conference that week. I filed a formal dispute with the registry that same day. The clerk, a woman named Dona Helena who had known me for 20 years, pulled me aside and said something I will never forget. She said, "Seu Afonso, this happens more than you think. Usually it's family." She told me that forged powers of attorney are the most common tool in real estate fraud. The perpetrator draws up a POA, forges the signature, gets it certified by a notary who doesn't verify properly, and then uses that POA to sell, mortgage, or encumber the property. The rightful owner only discovers it when they try to sell or when a bank refuses a loan. In some cases, the property is sold to an innocent buyer who has no idea the deed is forged. The legal mess takes years to untangle. Dona Helena gave me the contact information for a lawyer named Dr. Marcelo, a specialist in property fraud. I called him that afternoon. He told me the first step was to gather every document I had. The original deed, my passport showing I was in Lisbon on the date of the alleged signature, any correspondence with my daughter that might indicate intent. He also told me something that chilled my blood. He said, if the forged POA was used to register a promissory sale, your daughter may have already accepted a down payment from the buyer. If that money is gone, you could be sued for breach of contract by the buyer, even though you never signed anything. The law protects innocent purchasers in some cases. I spent the next week in a fog. I didn't confront Camilla. I needed to know how deep this went. I started with small things. I checked her social media. I found photos of her and her husband, Renato, at a luxury resort in Búzios. The dates matched the week the promissory sale was registered. I checked public records for the construction company listed on the contract. It was registered to a man named Eduardo, Renato's cousin, a shell company. I checked Camilla's bank records. She had given me access to her account years ago when she needed help with taxes during a financial rough patch. I still had the login. What I found made me sit down. 47,000 reais had been deposited into her account 3 days after the promissory sale registration. The transfer description read, "Advance payment, lot 14. That was my lot number, my house, my lot. Now I had a choice. I could go to the police. I could file a criminal complaint for forgery and fraud, but I knew what would happen. Camilla would be arrested. The family would be torn apart. Her 2 children, my grandchildren, would grow up visiting their mother in prison. I couldn't do that, not yet. There had to be another way. I called Dr. Marcelo again. I told him everything. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "There's a legal mechanism called a quiet title action. It's a lawsuit that asks the court to confirm you are the rightful owner and declare the fraudulent deed null and void. But the problem is notice. If we file the lawsuit, your daughter will be served. She'll know you discovered the fraud. She might try to disappear or transfer the money. We need to catch her in the act. We need her to publicly claim ownership of the property in front of witnesses." That's when the idea came to me. My retirement dinner was already being planned. Camilla was organizing it. I suggested to her that we hold it at the house, the family home. She agreed enthusiastically, a little too enthusiastically. I asked Dr. Marcelo to have a court stenographer present at the dinner, hidden, to record everything said. I also asked my brother, a retired judge, to attend. He would serve as a witness. The dinner was set for October 15th. 50 guests, catered, a rented sound system. I knew Camilla would use the opportunity to announce something. She had been unusually secretive about the agenda. She told me she had a surprise for me. I told her I was looking forward to it. The night of the dinner, I dressed carefully. I put on the gray suit Carol had bought me for our 30th anniversary. I took the original property deed out of the safe and placed it in a brown envelope. I put the envelope in the inside pocket of my jacket. I also put a small digital recorder in my breast pocket, the kind journalists use, voice activated. I stood at the front door of my house, the house I built with my own hands, the house where Carol and I raised our daughter, the house that now had a forged contract hanging over it like a guillotine. I looked at the oak tree in the front yard, the one Carol planted the year before she died. I took a breath. Then I opened the door and walked into my own trap. The first hour of the dinner was torture. 50 people in my backyard. String lights Carol had bought years ago still hanging between the trees. A catered churrasco. My brother Jorge pretending to enjoy a beer by the grill. The court stenographer posing as a photographer, camera around her neck, recording everything. And Camilla, my daughter, glowing like a bride, working the room like she owned it. Which, in her mind, she probably did. I made small talk with people I had known for 30 years. My former foreman, Adalberto, asked me about retirement plans. I said I was thinking about fishing. I was thinking about forged signatures and prison sentences. I shook hands. I laughed at jokes. I watched my daughter hug my brother and whisper something in his ear that made him go pale. He caught my eye and gave me a single nod. Something was coming. At 8:15, Camilla took the microphone. She tapped it twice. The feedback squealed. Everyone turned. She was standing on the back porch, the house behind her, the oak tree to her left. She smiled the smile I had seen 1,000 times, the one she used when she wanted something and knew she was going to get it. She started with the expected things. She talked about my career. She talked about my 31 years as a civil engineer. She talked about the bridges I had designed, the roads I had planned, the buildings that would outlive me. People clapped. I nodded. She talked about my wife, her mother, who had passed away 8 years ago from cancer. She choked up on cue. Someone handed her a napkin. She dabbed her eyes. It was a performance worthy of a television novella. Then she shifted. She said, "My father has spent his whole life building things for other people. Houses, schools, hospitals. But the thing he built for us, his family, is the most important of all. This house." She gestured behind her. "This house is where I learned to ride a bike, where my mother taught me to cook, where my father taught me to balance a checkbook. It's not just a house, it's our legacy." I felt the recorder in my breast pocket, warm against my chest. I felt the original deed in the brown envelope against my ribs. I waited. She said, "And because I love my father, because I want to honor his legacy, I have made a decision. A decision that I know will secure our family's future for generations." She paused. She looked directly at me. Her eyes were bright, excited. She believed she was about to give me good news. "I have signed a contract to sell this house to a development company. They're going to build a duplex. 2 modern homes on this lot. We are going to double the value of this property, and I have used a power of attorney which my father graciously gave me years ago to execute the sale. He didn't remember signing it, but I have the document. It's legal, it's notarized, it's done." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I have ever heard. 50 people, 50 faces turning toward me, some confused, some shocked. My brother Jorge set down his beer. The stenographer kept her camera raised, lens pointed directly at Camilla. I stood up slowly. I took the brown envelope out of my jacket. I did not open it yet. I walked toward the microphone. People parted. I heard someone whisper, "Afonso, what is happening?" I reached the porch. I stood next to my daughter. She was still smiling, but I could see the uncertainty creeping into her eyes. She handed me the microphone. I took it. I looked at the 50 faces in my backyard, the string lights, the oak tree, the house that Carol and I had built together. I said, "Thank you, Camilla, for your speech, for your love, for your concern about our family's future." I paused. Now I want to show everyone something. I opened the brown envelope. I pulled out the original property deed. I held it up so everyone could see the seal, the date, my signature. Then I pulled out a second document, the forged power of attorney that Camilla had presented to the notary, the one that had been rejected, the one I had obtained a certified copy of from the registry. I said, "This is the original deed to this house. It has my name on it, my signature, notarized in 1997, the year Carol and I bought this land. This deed has never been transferred. It has never been amended. It is still in my name." I held up the second document. This is a power of attorney that my daughter claims I signed. The notary in Campinas rejected it because the signature did not match their records. I have a statement from the notary confirming the rejection. I have a witness who saw my daughter prepare this document in her own handwriting. I have a bank record showing 47,000 reais deposited into her account 3 days after this forged document was registered. Camilla's face had gone white. She was not smiling anymore. I said I did not give my daughter permission to sell this house. I did not sign a power of attorney. I was in Lisbon, Portugal, on the date this document was supposedly signed. I have my passport. I have my boarding passes. I have hotel receipts. I have witnesses. I turned to face my daughter directly. "Camilla, I love you. You are my daughter. You are the mother of my grandchildren, but you committed a crime. You forged my signature. You attempted to sell my home without my consent. You accepted money for a sale I never authorized." She started to speak. Words came out, but they were fragments. "Pai, I can explain. It was a mistake. The notary made a mistake. I thought you had signed it years ago, I thought. You thought I would not find out." She stopped. "I found out 3 months ago," I said. "The notary called me. They did their job. They verified the signature. They caught the forgery. I have been waiting for tonight. I wanted everyone here to hear the truth from your own mouth." I looked back at the guests, 50 people. Some were recording on their phones, some were crying. My brother Jorge was standing very still, watching his niece with an expression I cannot describe. I said, "I'm not going to press charges tonight. I'm going to give my daughter 1 week to return the 47,000 reais to the buyer, to cancel the fraudulent registration at the registry office, to issue a public statement acknowledging that she acted without my authorization. If she does those things, I will consider not pursuing criminal charges. If she does not, I will file a police report for forgery, fraud, and attempted theft." I turned back to Camilla. She was crying now, real tears. Sobbing, she said, "Pai, please, I was desperate. Renato lost his job. We were going to lose our apartment. I didn't know what else to do. I thought if I could sell the house and pay off our debts, I could fix everything. I didn't want to hurt you." I said, "You didn't want to hurt me, but you were willing to make me homeless. You were willing to put me on the street so you could keep your apartment." She had no answer. I dismissed the guests. They filed out slowly, some stopping to hug me, some avoiding eye contact with Camilla. The stenographer handed me a memory card with the audio recording. My brother Jorge stayed. He stood next to me on the porch as the last car pulled away. He said, "You handled that better than I would have." I said, I'm not done yet. He looked at me. There's more, I said. The construction company that bought the contract, the one registered to Renato's cousin, they're not a real company, they're a shell. And the 47,000 reais, it came from a different account, an account I don't recognize. I think there's someone else involved, someone behind Camila. Jorge was quiet for a moment, then he said, who? I looked at the oak tree, the string lights, the house that now had a cloud on its title. Her husband, I said, or her mother-in-law, or both. This was not my daughter's idea. She's not smart enough to forge a notarized document. Someone else drafted that power of attorney, someone with legal knowledge, someone who knew exactly how the registry system works. I pulled out my phone. I showed Jorge a photograph I had taken earlier that day, a screenshot of a LinkedIn profile, a woman named Dra Simone, a lawyer who specialized in property law. She was listed as a partner at the same firm where Renato's cousin worked. She represents the construction company, I said, the one that supposedly bought my house. I called the firm yesterday. I pretended to be a potential client. They told me Dra Simone handles all their real estate transactions. She prepared the promissory sale contract. She witnessed the signatures. Jorge said, you think she knew it was forged? I said, I think she drafted it. The wind moved through the oak tree. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. My phone buzzed. A message from Camila. Pi, please let me explain. I'm coming over tomorrow morning, alone. I did not respond. I walked back into my house. I locked the door. I sat in Carol's rocking chair, the one by the front window, and I watched the string lights sway in the dark until the timer turned them off at midnight. At 2 in the morning, I was still awake. I was thinking about the lawyer. I was thinking about the shell company. I was thinking about the 47,000 reais that had moved through 3 accounts in 4 days. I was thinking about what Dr. Marcelo had told me. A forged deed is void as a matter of law, but the practical consequences are severe. Your title is clouded. You cannot sell or refinance until it's cleared. And removing the fraudulent deed requires a lawsuit that takes months and costs thousands. I had a quiet title action to file. I had a daughter who had betrayed me. I had a lawyer who might be the real architect of the fraud. And I had 1 week to decide whether to send my own daughter to prison. But first, I had a meeting at 9 in the morning. A meeting with someone who had information about the real owner of the shell company. Someone who was willing to talk because they had been cheated too. A woman named Adriana, Renato's ex-wife. Adriana was waiting for me at a cafe in the center of town. She was 41, sharp-featured, with the kind of tired eyes that come from years of disappointment. She had been married to Renato for 6 years. They divorced 2 years ago. She told me she had her own story about forged documents. She told me I was not the first person Renato and his family had tried to steal from. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were bank statements, emails, and a copy of a power of attorney that had been used to sell her own apartment while she was out of the country. The signature on that POA was also forged. The notary who certified it was the same notary who had processed my daughter's fake document, a man named Dr. Carlos, who operated out of a small office in Campinas. Adriana said, when I confronted Renato, he laughed. He said no one would believe me because the document was notarized. He said I would spend more money fighting it than the apartment was worth. He was right. I tried. I spent 23,000 reais on lawyers. I lost. The court said the notary's certification created a presumption of validity. I couldn't overcome it. She sipped her coffee. Her hands were steady. She had made peace with the loss, but not with the injustice. She said, your case is different. You have the notary's own admission that the signature was rejected. That gives you leverage. But Renato will not stop. He has done this before. He will do it again. And your daughter is his tool. Asked her about Dra Simone, the lawyer. Adriana's face hardened. She said, Simone is not just a lawyer. She is Renato's sister, half-sister, same mother. She drafted the contract for my apartment too. She knows exactly how to structure these deals so that the paper trail leads nowhere. The shell companies are registered in the names of homeless people, people who are paid a few hundred reais to sign documents they do not understand. When the fraud is discovered, The authorities chase ghosts. She gave me the name of a private investigator named Fabio. She said he had been tracking Renato's operations for 18 months. He had evidence of at least 7 properties that had been fraudulently transferred through the same method. Forged POAs, complicit notaries, shell companies, quick sales to third parties who believed they were buying legitimate property. The victims were always elderly, always alone, always people whose children had married into the family. I took Fabio's number. I shook Adriana's hand. She said, "Be careful, Sue Afonso. These people do not just steal homes, they destroy lives." I drove home. I called Fabio. He answered on the first ring. I told him who I was and who had referred me. He asked me to meet him at a garage in a neighborhood I did not know. I went because I had no other options. The garage was dark. Fabio was a thin man in his 50s with a scar along his jawline and a voice that sounded like gravel. He had a laptop open on a tool bench. He showed me photographs of Renato meeting with a man I recognized, the man who had processed the fake POA, Dr. Carlos, the notary. They were shaking hands outside a restaurant in Campinas. The date stamp was 2 days after my daughter's document had been rejected. Fabio said, "Your daughter's forged POA was rejected by a different notary, the honest one, so they went to Dr. Carlos instead. He certified a second version. That second version is currently in the registry system. It was registered yesterday. Your property now has a valid-looking power of attorney attached to it. The promissory sale contract was refiled this morning. The construction company is claiming they have a binding agreement." I felt the ground shift. I had thought I stopped it. I had exposed Camilla at the dinner. I had given her a week, but while I was sleeping, they had executed a second attempt, a successful one. Fabio said, "The registry system in Brazil does not require your presence to register a POA. It only requires a notarized document. Dr. Carlos provided that. The registry accepted it. The deed now shows a pending transaction. Any sale you try to make will be blocked. Any refinance will be denied. You are effectively locked out of your own property until a court orders the registration cancelled." He showed me more photographs. A woman I did not recognize making a deposit at a bank. A cash deposit of 120,000 reais into an account belonging to the shell company. He said, "That is the full down payment, 300,000 reais total, but they only paid the first installment. The rest is due upon transfer of title. They are trying to create a paper trail that makes it look like a legitimate transaction. If they can prove they paid money in good faith, they can argue they are innocent purchasers. Some judges accept that argument. You could lose your house and only be entitled to monetary compensation, which the shell company does not have." I sat down on a plastic chair in that dark garage. I was 63 years old. I had built bridges that carried thousands of cars every day. I had designed structures that withstood earthquakes, but I could not stop a piece of paper from stealing my home. I called Dr. Marcelo. I told him everything. He said, "We need to file an emergency injunction, a measure to suspend the registration and freeze the property title until a full hearing. I can have the papers ready by tomorrow morning, but I need proof. I need a sworn statement from the notary who rejected the first POA. I need the audio recording from the retirement dinner. I need a witness who can testify that Renato and Dr. Carlos were coordinating." I had the audio, I had the notary's statement, I had Adriana, I had Fabio's photographs, I had more than enough. I said, "File it." The next morning, Camilla arrived at my house. She came alone, as promised. She looked like she had not slept in days. Her eyes were red. Her hands trembled as she held a cup of coffee I did not offer her. She said, "Pai, I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but you have to understand. Renato told me it was legal. He said the power of attorney was something you had signed years ago. He found it in your old files. He said you would not mind because you always wanted me to have the house anyway." I said, "Camilla, you are a bank manager. You handle legal documents every day. You know that a power of attorney has an expiration date. You know that it must be signed in the presence of a notary. You know that the signature on that document did not match mine. You chose not to see any of that because you wanted the money." She started crying, real crying, the kind that comes from shame, not manipulation. She said, "I did not know about Dr. Carlos. Renato said he would handle the notary, I did not know he had a second document prepared. I did not know about the second registration. I swear, Pai, I thought the first one was rejected and that was the end. I thought you would be angry, but then forgive me. I did not know he went behind my back. I believed her partially. She was complicit, but she was also a pawn. Renato had used her, Simone had drafted the documents, Dr. Carlos had certified them. Renato had orchestrated the whole scheme. My daughter was guilty, but she was not the mastermind. I asked her, where is Renato now? She said, I do not know. He left last night. He took his clothes. He said he was going to visit his mother in Curitiba, but I checked his phone. He is not in Curitiba. He is in Foz do Iguaçu, near the border. My blood went cold. Foz do Iguaçu is a triple border area. Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, easy to disappear, easy to move money, easy to leave the country. I said, he is running. Camilla looked at me. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes, not fear of me, fear of what she had done, fear of what she had become. She said, Pai, what do I do? I told her the truth. You go to the police, you give a full statement, you testify against Renato, against Simone, against Dr. Carlos, you accept whatever consequences come. That is the only way you can start to make this right. She sat in my kitchen for a long time. The clock on the wall ticked. The oak tree cast shadows through the window. Finally, she nodded. She said, I will do it. She did. That afternoon, we went to the civil police station in Campinas. Camilla gave a 3-hour statement. She surrendered her phone. She provided bank records, text messages, email correspondence with Simone. She gave them the name of the shell company and the account numbers where the money had been deposited. The detective, a man named Delegado Martins, listened without interruption. When she finished, he looked at me. He said, Sue Afonso, you have a strong case, but I need to warn you. Renato has probably already left the country. Simone is a lawyer. She will claim attorney-client privilege. Dr. Carlos will say he acted in good faith. The shell company has no assets. Even if we convict them, you may never recover your legal costs, and the quiet title action could take a year. I said, I do not care about the money. I care about my house. I care about my daughter. I care about making sure they do not do this to anyone else. Delegado Martins nodded. He said he would issue a warrant for Renato's arrest and open an investigation into Dr. Carlos and Simone. That night I sat in Carol's rocking chair again. I held the original deed. I thought about the bridge I had designed 20 years ago, the one that crossed the Rio Paraíba do Sul. It had taken 3 years to build. There were setbacks, floods, supply chain problems, a worker died, but we finished it. It still stands. This was the same, a structure under attack, a foundation being tested. I had built that bridge. I could save this house. But I needed to find Renato before he crossed that triple border. I made a decision I never thought I would make. I called Fabio and asked him to track Renato's location through his phone records. He had access to sources I did not want to know about. Within 4 hours, he gave me an address, a hotel in Puerto Iguazu, Argentina, a 15-minute walk from the border crossing. Renato was planning to cross into Paraguay the next morning. I called Delegado Martins. He said he could not make an arrest across international borders without extradition paperwork. That would take weeks. Renato would be gone by then. I asked him what would happen if Renato voluntarily returned to Brazil. He said, then I can arrest him immediately. I hung up. I looked at Carol's photograph on the mantelpiece. She had always been the one who solved family problems. I asked her what she would do. She did not answer, but I knew. I called Camilla. I told her Renato was in Puerto Iguazu. I told her he was planning to cross into Paraguay. I told her she was the only person he might trust enough to return. She was silent for a long time. Then she said, what do you want me to do? I said, call him. Tell him you have access to the original deed. Tell him you can bring it to him. Tell him you want to run away together. Get him to cross back into Brazil. Meet him at the bus station in Foz do Iguaçu. I will be there with the police. She started crying, but she said yes. The drive from Campinas to Foz do Iguaçu is 10 hours. We left at midnight. Camila sat in the passenger seat of my car. She did not speak for the first 3 hours. I did not push her. Somewhere past Londrina, she started talking. She told me about the first time Renato suggested the plan. It was 6 months ago. They were having dinner at a restaurant. He had been laid off from his job at a logistics company. They were behind on their mortgage. He said he had found a solution. He said her father had a paid-off house and no immediate use for it. He said family property should stay in the family. He said it would be a loan, really. They would sell the house, pay off their debts, and then buy a smaller property for me to live in. He made it sound reasonable. She said she knew it was wrong. She said she tried to say no multiple times. But each time, Renato found a new angle. He brought Simon to dinner to explain how the paperwork could be structured. He showed her examples of other families who had done the same thing. He told her I would never have to know. He told her I would be happier in a smaller house anyway, easier to maintain at my age. I listened. I did not interrupt. I did not defend myself. I just drove. We arrived in Foz do Iguaçu at 10 in the morning. Camila had sent Renato a message at 7. She told him she had taken the original deed from my safe. She told him she was at the bus station. She told him she loved him and wanted to start a new life together in Paraguay. He replied in 5 minutes, "I will be there at 11. Delegado Martins and 2 officers were waiting in an unmarked van near the bus station entrance. I was in a cafe across the street with a clear view of the platform. Camila was standing near ticket counter 2, holding a bag that contained nothing but a change of clothes and a recording device. At 11:12, Renato walked into the station. He was carrying a small backpack. He was wearing sunglasses and a cap. He looked around, saw Camila, and smiled. He walked toward her with open arms. She did not hug him. She pointed at the van. He turned. He saw the officers approaching. He ran. He made it 10 meters. One of the officers tackled him near a vending machine. He struggled. He shouted. He called Camila a traitor. He called her a liar. He said she had planned everything. He said she was the one who forged the signature. He said she had threatened to leave him if he did not help. None of it mattered. The officers read him his rights. They found a Paraguayan passport in his backpack, a fake identity card, and a bank card with a balance of 210,000 reais, the remaining proceeds from the shell company's down payment. Renato was arrested for forgery, fraud, criminal conspiracy, and attempted theft by fraud. He was taken to a federal police station in Foz do Iguaçu. He was held without bail. Delegado Martins called me that evening. He said, "Seu Afonso, you did something I rarely see. You used your daughter to catch her own husband. That took courage." I said, "It took desperation." He said, "Sometimes they are the same thing." Dr. Carlos, the notary, was arrested 3 days later. An audit of his records revealed 17 powers of attorney certified in the previous year where the signatory had never appeared in person. All of them were used in fraudulent property transactions. He was charged with criminal conspiracy and document fraud. His notary license was revoked. Simon was arrested a week later. She tried to claim attorney-client privilege. The judge ordered her phone and computer seized. The forensic analysis revealed a spreadsheet listing 12 properties, including mine, with notes on the owners, their ages, their health status, and whether they lived alone. She had been running a systematic operation. She had targeted elderly homeowners with no immediate heirs. She had used her legal knowledge to structure transactions that appeared legitimate on paper. She had charged Renato and other clients a percentage of the sale price, 15% for a forged POA, 25% for a full package, including shell company registration. Her law license was suspended. She was charged with 37 counts of fraud, forgery, and criminal association. The quiet title action took 8 months, not a year, as Delegado Martins had predicted. Dr. Marcelo filed the emergency injunction within 48 hours of the retirement dinner. The judge granted it on a Friday afternoon. The fraudulent registration was suspended. The property title was frozen in my name. The shell company filed a motion to lift the injunction, claiming they were innocent purchasers. The motion was denied after Dr. Marcillo presented the audio recording from the dinner, the notary's rejection statement, and Camilla's testimony. The final hearing was in June. The judge ruled in my favor. The promissory sale contract was declared null and void. The registered POA was cancelled. The shell company was ordered to pay my legal fees, but they had no assets. The court also ordered the return of the down payment to the buyer, who turned out to be an elderly couple from Sao Paulo who had been scammed into believing they were buying a legitimate investment property. They lost 120,000 reais. I testified on their behalf. I gave them a copy of my legal documentation to help them recover their money from a victim's compensation fund. Camilla was not charged. The prosecutor offered her immunity in exchange for her testimony against Renato, Dra, Simone, and Dr. Carlos. She accepted. She testified in 3 separate trials. Her testimony was the key evidence that led to convictions in all 3 cases. Renato was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Dra, Simone received 6 years. Dr. Carlos received 4 years. Camilla lost her job at the bank. Her employer said she had violated internal compliance policies by using her position to process the fraudulent transaction. She did not fight the termination. She moved into a small apartment in a different city. She started therapy. She wrote me a letter every week. I did not always respond, but I read every one. One Sunday morning, about a year after the dinner, I was sitting in Carol's rocking chair. The oak tree was full and green. The string lights were gone. I had taken them down myself. I was holding the original deed, the one with my name, my signature, notarized in 1997. I thought about the bridge I had designed, the one over the Rio Paraíba do Sul. It had survived floods. It had survived earthquakes. It had survived the weight of thousands of vehicles every day for 2 decades. It was still standing, not because it was lucky, because it was built on a foundation that was designed to hold. I thought about my daughter, about the letters, about the slow, painful process of rebuilding a relationship that had been cracked by greed and betrayal. I did not know if it would ever be the same, but I knew that structures can be repaired, foundations can be reinforced. It takes time, it takes honesty, it takes the willingness to look at the damage directly and say, this is what broke, and this is how we fix it. Camilla came to visit on the anniversary of the dinner. She brought my grandchildren. We sat in the backyard under the oak tree. She did not apologize again. She did not need to. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a photograph of me and Carol on our wedding day, standing in front of the first house we ever rented. A small house, a starter house, the house where we learned what it meant to build something together. I looked at the photograph. I looked at my daughter. I saw Carol in her eyes, the same shape, the same light. She said, I found it in Mom's old albums. I thought you might want it. I said, thank you. She said, Pai, I know I cannot undo what I did, but I can spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of your forgiveness. I did not say anything. I just nodded, and we sat there under the oak tree in the house that had almost been stolen, and we watched the afternoon light move across the grass. But the story does not end there. Because 3 months after the quiet title action was finalized, I received a letter from a lawyer I had never heard of. A lawyer representing the elderly couple who had lost their money buying my house. They wanted to meet me. They said they had information about other victims, other properties, other families. They asked if I would help them build a case, a larger case. I looked at the letter. I looked at Carol's photograph. I looked at the oak tree. I said yes. That yes changed everything. The elderly couple's lawyer introduced me to 5 other families, 5 other properties, 5 other stories that followed the same pattern: a forged power of attorney, a complicit notary, a shell company, a family member who enabled the betrayal. Some of them had lost their homes, some were still fighting, some had given up. I spent the next 2 years helping them, not as a lawyer. I am not a lawyer, I am a civil engineer, but I know how to read documents. I know how to find weak points in a structure. I know how to build a case the same way I built bridges, one beam at a time, one witness at a time, one document at a time. We formed a group, the Association of Victims of Property Fraud, 15 members at first, then 30, then 60. We met in the basement of a church in Campinas. We shared our stories. We shared our evidence. We shared the names of notaries and lawyers who had participated in these schemes. We built a database, a map of fraud across the state of Sao Paulo. The state prosecutor's office took notice. They launched a task force, Operation Deed Cleaner. They arrested 11 notaries, 23 lawyers, and 41 shell company operators. They recovered 7 properties. They returned them to their rightful owners. They established a dedicated hotline for elderly homeowners to report suspicious POA registrations. I testified in 6 more trials. Each time I sat in the same courtroom, in the same wooden chair, and told the same story. The story of a retirement dinner, a forged signature, a daughter who chose wrong, a house that almost slipped away. I am 67 now. The house is still mine. The oak tree is taller. Carol's rocking chair is still by the window. Camilla visits every Sunday. She brings my grandchildren. We sit under the tree. We do not talk about the past. We talk about the future. She is studying to become a legal assistant. She wants to help other families avoid what she did. She has a long way to go, so do I. There is a question that follows me, a question I cannot fully answer. How do you measure betrayal in a family? Is it the moment of the crime or the years of rebuilding? Is it the signature on a forged document or the silence that follows? I do not know, but I know that a structure only holds if the foundation is sound. And the foundation of any family is trust. Once cracked, it can be repaired, but the crack never fully disappears. If this story resonated with you, if you have seen something similar in your own family or community, look at your property deed. Look at who has access to your documents. Look at the notaries who certify signatures you do not remember making. Because the people who steal homes do not break down doors, they do not climb walls, they use paper, they use ink, they use the signatures of people who trusted them. I am Afonso, this is my house, this is my story, and I will keep telling it as long as there is someone willing to listen.